Greetings and salutations. This is Abdelhadi with The Bitter Truth, where we may not have all the answers, but we're going to ask a hell of a lot of questions. You can also become a bitter pill or a spoonful of sugar or whatever you want to do at thebittertruth.info. We have a Patreon link there, patreon.com/thebittertruth, or you could just go to thebittertruth.info, and there's some fabulous swag to make your life better. There's t-shirts and all kinds of stuff, and support the show, and we appreciate it. Also, if you wouldn't mind subscribing to the channel for free on YouTube and hitting a like button and that kind of thing, it helps us with the algorithms, which I still don't completely understand. So there's that. But anyway, my guest today is Brittany Richey. She's the founder of Tutor Vegas. And she was just recently interviewed by Japanese television. And also she did a little spiel in the New York Times about an entirely different subject that I'm sure we're going to touch on as well, because we're going to talk about quite a few things today. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me.
No, thank you for coming on. So how's it going out there in Vegas?
It's going a little better. It was really hard for Vegas during the COVID crisis, but ever since June 1st, which was yesterday, I guess they're opening everything back up again. So
okay.
I've never seen Vegas so crowded, actually. I was watching like a live stream of Vegas, and it was completely wall-to-wall people down there. Usually it's not even like that unless there's like a concert or something. But
wow,
Vegas is it's back, I guess.
I haven't been to Vegas in a long time, probably 6-7 years, and it was never not wall-to-wall when I was there. I mean,
right.
It's always wall-to-wall.
That's true. Yeah. We haven't seen that many people at all ever since, the beginning of COVID. So it's been hard for a lot of people who live here, because most of the people who live here actually work on the Strip. So I actually know some people who they only do conventions.
Sure.
And they only do the convention season. And the rest of the year they don't even work. But the convention season was there was
shot.
Yeah. Yeah. So, and now some of them, they're going to be doing conventions online from now on, I guess, because they realized they could do it online. Well, the electronic convention is already kind of deals with online things. So that makes sense. That's one of the biggest ones out here. But Vegas seems to get hit pretty hard whenever there's like a downturn in the economy. So
because it's all tourism.
Right.
Right.
So we've been having a bit of a hard time out here, but it's looking like it's getting a little better.
Nice.
I don't know. Yeah.
How long you been living in Vegas?
I've been here since I was 14.
Okay.
So.
All right. So, okay. So you're a young woman. You have your own business, and
mm-hmm.
I'm guessing you're a millennial, right?
I am.
Okay.
Yes.
So, why do you think that most Americans your age, there and abouts? I mean, I have an answer, but I'd like to hear from you. Why do you think they don't have any real faith or trust in our current system as it is?
Well, millennials have been through a lot, with 9/11, that whole thing we saw, unfold on the TV. And there were many different theories as to what really went on with that. And then the whole financial crisis of 2008 really impacted millennials, because that was right when we were first starting out in life. And I'll never forget when 2008 happened. It was one of the only times I've ever seen my dad really upset. Like he was almost crying that day when he pretty much lost everything. And like I said, Vegas was hit really hard by that. And it's, ever since then, people pretty much understand about what happened with the banksters. And so that was really bad. And now with the whole COVID thing, it just seems like a lot of millennials feel like there's no matter how hard they try or no matter what they do, they're never going to get ahead in life. And I know a lot of millennials have so much student debt that they'll never pay off. So it's a multitude of things, but yeah, it's hard sometimes to think about, because other generations, they like to make fun of millennials, and I think that contributes to it also. Millennials, we just feel like sometimes it's our own fault, but there are other things that have been going on. Like you were saying, you're part of like the Gen X, right?
Yeah, for the most part, yeah.
Yeah. So millennials, we've only ever seen the establishment in a bad way,
Right.
I would say.
Well, that's things like with older guys or whatever, guys my age who make fun of millennials, and they'll say shit like, "Oh yeah, they want free college." I'm like, "Yeah, we went to school for free, asshole." Like
it's not that we want free. Like when I was,
but you pay
supporting
taxes.
Bernie, it's not like we want free stuff. It's
right.
We pay taxes and we
right.
don't get anything really
back
out of
for
it.
That's the thing is like, a game I've been playing the last 5-10 years, especially if I meet somebody about my age and they make some crack like that. I'm like, where you go to school? Whether it was in California or here in Texas, where I live in Austin now, they'll say, "Oh, I went to Texas State." "Oh, when did you get out of school?" "Well, 1988. "Oh, okay. I got out of school in 87. What were you paying for school? Do you remember?" "Oh, sure, I remember, man." I was like, "God, like $300 a semester." I'm like, "Yeah, I was paying $100 a quarter, asshole." Which means you're not paying $7,000 a semester. You're not coming out of school owing $50,000 or $100,000. I had a $3,000 student loan for like padding. I got the loan just to have some cash in the bank, and paid that within 3-4 years being out of school. That was my only student loan. You know what I mean? It's just like, so yeah.
And if you bring up that how much money we give to, say, Israel, which is billions upon billions a year,
and everybody else, we support 73% of the world's dictators on top of fucking Israel. Yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, and they have free college. Most of the money we give them goes to weapons, but they have free college, free health care. And it's just funny because it seems like there's an agenda to divide everyone and get everyone pointing the finger at each other.
Sure.
Instead of pointing the finger at the establishment. It reminds me of this meme, I guess you could call it, where it's the guy who's a banker and he has like 1 million cookies on his plate and he's looking at like the middle-class white guy and says that immigrant wants your cookie and the immigrant only has one cookie, and he only has one cookie. So it's just funny to see how everyone's fighting amongst themselves instead of fighting, the 1%, or because we're really on the same side, if you think about it.
It's a class struggle. I think if you're making under $1 million a year, and you're not an owner of the means of production, which most of us are not, then you're in the same class. Just ask any has-been kid actor or rock star who pissed their fortune away. Not hard to do if you don't come from generational wealth. Right? If you're related to the Kennedys, you can have a coke problem for years and not miss it, not miss a beat. Right? You'll have money until the day you die. Right? But if you're just working class, or if you come from a couple of generations of some solid wealth base, like your parents had some property, your grandparents had some property, and they were able to kind of keep that all in the family and everything's cool, that's great. But even then, all you need is a couple of good downturns and lose it all. I mean, how many stories have we seen during COVID where people have a business in the family for 100 years and it's over? Right. And I just, and to your point really quick about Israel and their healthcare, one thing I like to tease Christians about, or people that say they're Christian, Israel has their healthcare. They also pay for abortions. Did you know that? That's fun at parties, by the way, just FYI. But you make a good point though, because we've just seen again, I thought when 2008 went down, what you lived through, right? If you want to talk about that,
that was the biggest. If you want to talk about a transfer of wealth, that was the biggest transfer of wealth ever. And but now with COVID, it's even bigger. It's bigger.
And so, like what you guys saw as kids, because that was like 13 years ago. You're just getting out of college, right? Roughly.
Yeah.
What happened with you? What happened with you guys personally?
Well, my dad, he was a real estate agent in Vegas. That's why we moved here, because it was the fastest growing city at the time, and he had bought some investment properties, and he just basically lost everything. And we were able to actually stay in the house that we were living in for free, because they were just letting people stay in their houses. Since so many people were upset with the banks, they were actually destroying the house, like just taking a sledgehammer to the house. So they came up with this program called Cash for Keys, even, where if you stayed in the house and you didn't destroy it, they would give you $3,000 cash for giving them back the keys to the bank, because no one even wanted to leave their houses.
Wow.
So, yeah, it was pretty crazy. And then the whole, Occupy Wall Street thing happened right after that. And my mom was pretty active with that. So I kind of saw through her what was really going on. And I feel like a lot of people started to see and started to point the finger at the people that need to be pointed at, which would be, the 0.1% or whatever you want to call them.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, I like to think about it like there's an analogy where the politics is like WWF, right? They put on a great show to get everybody riled up. Donald Trump was really good for that. And then backstage, they're all best friends and they're all in bed with each other and with corporations.
Literally, yeah.
Right. And then meanwhile, we're all fighting amongst ourselves.
Yeah.
So.
Well, how old were you during 9/11?
I was during 9/11. I was in 7th grade, so I was about 13.
Okay, so 12. So you've literally come up with all this shit your whole life.
Mm-hmm. In 2008, I was 20. Yeah.
To give a perspective, okay, so when I was 12 in the 70s, there were jobs in this country. Minimum wage was about $1.10. If you worked at General Motors, where I grew up, you could make about $7 or $8 an hour when the minimum wage was $1. So you're literally making 7 times the minimum wage with benefits and a pension. We had a bunch of old guys on my block that got out of World War II, worked at GM or Bethlehem Steel or Jurgensen Steel or Firestone Tire, all these companies that employed 1,500, 2,000 people a pop in this one little town. It's in South Central LA, but still it was in this one area. And now they're older and retired and whatever on their pension, just hanging out. And I saw that exist and now it's all gone. Right. So you guys came up not seeing any of that. To you, that's like telling you stories about Cinderella.
Right. Yeah. I've been wanting to buy a house for a long time now. And I haven't done it because of what happened in 2008. I've been waiting for it to crash again, because right now the market just keeps going up. When it happened in 2008, my mom actually was a loan officer at the time, and she knew something wasn't right and that it was probably everything was going to come crashing down. But it still hasn't happened yet. And they're printing money like it's going out of style. We've never printed this much money ever in history. So it's crazy. Like out here, if the house goes on the market, they have so many cash offers and over the asking price offers that it's almost impossible to buy a house unless you have cash. And especially if you're self-employed like I am.
Right. So well, they overcorrected too, like after the crash because of the ninja loans and all that shit. Now it's just like, now they don't even look at your self-employed income. They look at your taxable income. Mm-hmm. Right. So they look at what, it's like, oh, wow, you made $100,000. No, you didn't, because we only taxed you on $30,000. Right. So they're saying, well, you can't afford this house on $30,000. It's like, yeah, but all these expenses that I just listed were made based on the fact that I made $100,000. And they're like, yeah, no. Right. And then it is tougher for self-employed now. And to your point though, about printing more money, between the wars and all the bailouts, including the most recent COVID bailouts, that's not taxpayer dollars. They're just printing, like you said, they're printing out money.
They're just printing it out of thin air. That's the other thing about everybody wanting free stuff. Like, God forbid we, print money, for everything else.
Right. To go to war and to give Israel a $4 billion a year military voucher. Because that $4 billion a year we give them in aid, on top of the aid we give them, that's a military voucher. They can only cash that coupon to buy more weapons. And then even last week, Uncle Joe gave them an extra $1 billion because they said, hey, we overspent our weapons when we bombed those people in Gaza. And so we need more weapons. So on top of the $4 billion we gave them last year, we're giving them another $1 billion for basically 3 weeks worth of carpet bombing. It's pretty insane. And then, and to your point, second, when you're talking about printing money, I don't know if you knew this, but 25% of all the money we have in circulation was printed in the last year.
This year.
Isn't that crazy? It's like in the last like 15 months. I'm like, that's insane.
Yeah. Well, it's almost as if the people that have tons of money benefit from running the country into a huge recession every decade or so in order to consolidate the wealth and get it into an even smaller number of hands. And that's exactly what's happening again. Well, so I think, to question, say, follow the money in a for-profit system is only logical. And then that's where a lot of my questions come from with the COVID thing.
Well, and then let's talk about that because that kind of feeds right into a privatization agenda, doesn't it? I mean, everything in this country is privatized.
Yeah. Being a teacher, I've seen so many parents, more parents than ever before, go into private schools this last year because they're not happy with the public schools. They had the kids here online the entire day from 8 until like 3:00 in the afternoon in front of the computer. And it was really hard for parents to figure out what they were going to do because someone had to be home with the kids.
Right.
And there were, like 14-year-old siblings helping out with the online school with the younger students. And they really haven't learned much at all this year. So that's been hard. And, but I was very fortunate with my business. I actually gained a lot of tutoring students because everybody needs a tutor right now. So, but yeah, if I was still a teacher at the public school district, I don't know what I would do. That was the whole reason why I quit, was because they wanted me to teach 40 kindergartners in one class. Yeah, Nevada has the worst student-teacher ratio. It's really bad out here.
That's
literally 40.
Those kindergartners. They're babies.
Right. Yeah. Imagine trying to do anything with 45-year-olds. It's just not going to happen. When one teacher, I remember when I was in kindergarten, it was like 20 kids with 2 teachers, which is still a lot of 5-year-olds. But so I even went to the fire marshal, and it took me forever to actually get him on the phone. But I told him, I said, I know there's got to be a carrying capacity, because if the nightclub went over their capacity, they would close the whole nightclub down.
Yeah, they would.
So I said, it's a safety issue, not to mention that the kids aren't learning anything because it's just a joke. But, and he basically told me, he said, well, we here at the fire department, we have a gentleman's agreement with the school district that we're not going to fine them.
A gentleman's capacity. We all have ourselves a gentleman's agreement here.
Yeah, that's what he said. So, because I said, you need to do something, isn't that your job? I remember when there were fire drills at school, like the actual police department would show up.
Right.
They don't even do that anymore here.
Wow. So, dude.
Yeah.
I used to, about 20 odd years ago, I used to substitute teach for a minute, and oh my God. I remember like one day because it was before it was like the voice recorder would call you. Once it got to there, it was like you could just say no and not feel guilty. But this is back when they had the nice lady who got up at 4 to call you, right? And she picked up the phone and she's like, "Hey, listen, I got good news. You can sleep in today." I'm like, "Okay, I got you this half day, but you're gonna get paid for a full day. It's a kindergarten class." And I was like, "All right, what time do I go?" "Oh, you're going at 12. Isn't that great?" I'm like, "Yeah, sure." And I walked in, and it was probably 30 kindergartner kids, and I had 2 aides. And I was fucking exhausted.
Yeah.
Oh, man, it was amazing. Like they were like they're still toddlers. They're like, and they were terrified because the teacher wasn't there. And I'm this guy, and it's like, where's Mrs. Smith? And I'm like, well, she's not here today. Well, why? And then some of them couldn't even speak. They were so like, this one girl kept pulling on my pants. And you're like, I'm like, what's the matter, baby? What's the matter? She goes, and then the little boy translating for her goes, she has to go to the bathroom. I'm like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
And
then half of them are like afraid to go to the bathroom because,
right. So the aide took him to the bathroom or whatever. And I was just like, and I got home and I passed out for 3 hours. I got home around 4:00 and I slept till 7. I didn't even move. And I was just like, dude, that's exhausting. You teach kindergarten teachers that especially need to be making $100,000 a year. Easy.
Yeah. And that was only half a day. Here they have kindergarten, the full day, no naps. We used to take naps in kindergarten, and they literally have 10 minutes here in Las Vegas, 10 minutes for recess.
Why? Are they building cars?
Right. Like by the time you get out there, it's been already like 3 minutes, and then you got to line them up, which takes a couple minutes. So they're out there for 5 minutes and they just run around screaming, and then they never get a chance to socialize or anything. And then that's it. So I would always take my classes out for another recess, and nobody ever told me anything, because it's a complete joke. 10 minutes.
Because you had a gentleman's agreement, right?
Right. Yeah. Well, I didn't ask, so they didn't say anything.
Right.
And then eventually other kindergarten teachers started taking their classes out too, because they knew that it wasn't right. But I'm glad that I decided to make that I made the decision to quit doing that, because I actually make a lot more money now than I did.
Sure you do.
Yeah.
Well, and you pay your taxes last because you're 1099 and do-da. I mean, there's ups and downs. I mean, I'm self-employed. My day gig is self-employed. So I understand it. But I mean, but to your point about privatization and the agenda, it just seems like everything now is a commodity. Everything, healthcare, education. I went through Los Angeles Unified Schools when I was a kid, and this was like in the 70s. When people still gave a shit about that crap. And my school district literally was always in the top 10. Like, and sometimes top 5, like San Francisco, Chicago, like New York, like serious competition. And the stuff that I learned, I remember, I was not AP, and anybody that knows me will tell you that. I was not AP, and literally, folded my homework, stuck it in my pocket. I couldn't be bothered. Still got out of there with a 3.0. Right. And had some really decent teachers that taught me some stuff, because they were engaged, and they were doing things and talking to you, right, and teaching you things. And when I was back in the school districts later in my life, I was like, God damn it! It's like, it's almost like they're doing it because the hours are good, and you get the summers off. But but there's with all this, teaching to the test and standardized testing. And, everyone's so fucking hung up on STEM. Nobody does arts anymore or whatever. It just,
a lot of arts have been cut now ever since COVID, and a lot of them won't come back, I don't think.
Oh, I know they won't come back. I mean, last time I was subbing was 20 some years ago, and I would be in a music class, and, the instruments were all locked up. And I remember one school I was at, I asked them, hey, it wasn't, I was in music. I'm a musician, but I don't teach music. And so I was supposed to be teaching an English class. And so anyway, I got this music class for 3 days. And I asked the kid, I go, hey man, do you guys just not play because I'm here and I'm the sub? And she goes, oh, no. We never open that. All we do is listen to records and classical music and write stuff down, which is what I was doing. Is I thought it was sub work. No, you don't get to hand the kid the $4,000 tuba because you're just a sub and you might be stoned or whatever. But it was like, no, the stuff's always locked up. The kids don't get at it. They don't get to play music in a music class, right? Instead they get the same music credit. It was ridiculous, man. It was a junior high school. When I was in junior high, we had band, we had all that stuff. And but further, you got a little sidetracked. But further on the privatization agenda, it doesn't just stop with education and healthcare, does it? It's like prisons, the military, the whole 9 yards.
My brother is in prison for a non-violent, non-trafficking drug charge, and they just keep moving him from place to place, almost as if it's like they get money. They have to pay money for him to go to all these different prisons around the country, and. Yeah, the whole prison thing.
But if he's a nonviolent, non-trafficking drug offender, he needs counseling, not prison.
Exactly.
Right. And then on top of that, they aren't spending money; they're making money. The average prisoner,
they're making money.
Yeah, their average prisoner yields about $60,000 a year to the prison system, whereas if he's on the street, he doesn't yield anything. Right.
Yeah, and then they have them. They have them in there working for pennies on the dollar.
What do they got him making? Do you know?
Well, he's not doing anything since COVID. They're on lockdown all the time.
Okay. So. Okay, because I know they make parts for AT&T phones, and they make McDonald's uniforms, and they make some military gear, which is not a little ironic. They actually when when Michael Bloomberg was running for president, he got busted using a prison call center to make his robocalls for him. So these guys are getting pennies on the hour to make robocalls for the guy who did stop and frisk as a fucking Republican, but now he was running as a Democrat because the Democrats have Trump derangement syndrome. And it doesn't matter what you did. You could have choked babies in your old life like George W. Bush. But if you hate Trump, we like you. If you hate Trump, we love you. Like Dr. fucking Fauci, who's been busted in so many goddamn lies. Like, you know, I'm operating on common sense with all this stuff. I mean, I still wear a mask, even though they said you don't have to. And I got my shots and all that shit. But that motherfucker was such a liar and not based on science. He just basically would poll people. Oh, they don't like this thing. We better tell them to do something else. And then the first 3 months, and he was saying, don't wear a mask. Because, and then 2 months later admits that he was lying. Right. Because the whole point of it is that, you know, he's trying to save PPE for doctors and nurses and not let us how many people did he kill with that fake information? And yet he's not deplatformed. I'm in Facebook jail again for 30 days. Really? I just got jailed 30 days ago. I didn't kill anybody. I never even talk about this shit on the show because I don't want to kill anybody. Right. Yeah. You know, but now that most of us got our shots, I'm like, fuck it. It's cool. I mean, and I know when I read the New York Times article, you had an issue with the shots, but they didn't give you enough juice in that article. You didn't get enough room in that article. And they mentioned because you're concerned about trying to get pregnant, and they sort of left it at that. So, and then they moved on to the next person. Tell me a little bit about that. Yeah.
Well, the reporter that I talked to, she was actually really nice over the phone. I talked to her for about an hour. And I liked the questions that she had asked me. I thought it was interesting that one of the first questions she asked me was, what was my political affiliation? So I said, I'm glad you asked me that, because that was one of the reasons that I have been a little bit hesitant to be public about my feelings on that, because people will automatically label you like a Trump supporter if you so much as question anything about the official narrative or whatever. So I said, well, I like the Green Party. I don't like the establishment parties, and I'm not a Trump supporter. I can't stand Donald Trump. I'm not one of these Q people, because I was already anticipating, how it's the New York Times, so I knew they were going to try to
immediately. Yeah, immediately you're a Trumper. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and I actually told her, the only way I'm going to even give you my real name is if you run by me everything that you're going to say in the article. And she agreed to that, which I was shocked by.
That's shocking.
But yeah. So, because I said, it's such a sensitive topic and it's become so polarized, and, having my own business, but then again, if I wasn't self-employed, I probably really wouldn't talk about it, because people will try to come for your job, and
it's true story.
If they don't agree with you.
That's right.
So, so in the article, when it got published, she had interviewed a whole bunch of people and their reasoning why they have second thoughts about getting the shots. And everyone else, she mentioned that their political affiliation, which was conservative, but she didn't mention what mine was. So it's kind of plays into the whole thing that we were talking about with everything being polarized, and, left versus right, pro versus anti. And it's funny because people will say you're anti-science. I don't think anybody's really anti-science. Maybe some people, some crazy people, but I love science. I'm a teacher. I teach science. I think science is great. And the fact that you can't question it, that goes against the nature of what science really is.
Right. Yeah.
And the other thing is, people who know the first thing about science would know that you need a control group. But what the plan is to inject every last person with like an experimental injection with no long-term studies. So I told her my problem is with the corporations that are producing the vaccine and the pharmaceutical corporations. And it's interesting because the left has always been the first ones to question those corporations. Right. Not anymore. Yeah. Nope. And I said, and the fact that it's become so taboo now is concerning, because she said that she was also interviewing a psychologist about this. So I said, when she told me that, I was really worried, because, a psychologist, I said, I would be interested to hear from the psychologist as to why people are so prone to not questioning these companies anymore, especially when it comes to something being injected into your body.
Right.
So I said, I would love to trust the experts, but they really don't have a very good track record at all. If you look at Johnson & Johnson, they couldn't even get baby powder right. Like they had asbestos in their baby powder for decades.
Right.
And then they tried to cover it up, and they've paid out billions of dollars in settlements. Same thing with Pfizer. Pfizer's paid out like,
what? I should jump into that. My balls still itch. Maybe that's the problem. I'm kidding, but I'm sorry, I interrupted you.
You have your 5G satellite popping out of your head yet?
Yeah, right.
But yeah, and people want to automatically say that, or like talk about like flat Earth. I'm like, that has nothing to do with anything. I'm talking about the pharmaceutical corporations.
Well, we live in an age now where the so-called left, and I say that because it's dead. There's no left. I mean, it's just the things, the very things that we questioned when I was a kid, right? And I mean, in the 80s, right? Like you would never, you didn't even call your pot dealer on the phone without talking in code. Mm-hmm. And it was something you established early on. Hey man, like every 2 months, I wasn't a big smoker, probably, I would get like a couple of eights that would last me a couple of months. I wasn't like a big puffer. I did a lot of other stuff. But like you sit there and go, hey man, I'm out of oregano. Can I come over and get some? Right? Because you're afraid of being tapped. Right? Mm-hmm. Pasadena police, right? Pasadena, California, for a fact, would fly around helicopters with heat lamps or heat censored cameras to see where the heat lamps were, to find people growing pot. These are the very same agencies now that guys like me, and I live in chewy blue Austin, they trust these agencies now. They trust the CIA when James Clapper, who lied us into a fucking war, or Robert Mueller, who lied us into a fucking war. He's going to save us. He's going to get Donald Trump. Like, really? Is he really?
Yeah. And they've had a history of like experimenting on
100%. 100%.
And it takes 40 years to find out that was even happening. So you really think 40 years from now we're going to find out that nothing was going on?
This is how cynical I am. I'm 57 years old. So my attitude is, if it, I had about 30 friends get it, nothing happened. I'm like, all right, cool. I finally fell on the sword. If I die, I hope it's quick, because I don't mind being dead. I just don't want to be dying. I don't like the dying part. I don't want to be like, growing a third head and have it eat my shoulder, that kind of shit. I want to just be all dead, not mostly dead, all dead, mostly dead, but all dead. Forget about it. So I don't want to be, whatever. So my attitude was sort of worst possible case scenario. I don't catch COVID, best possible, or I don't die. But there's a lot of pressure on everyone right now to get the shot.
And everybody's really feeling that pressure. And
I think everyone's, but I think also too, I think everyone's really scared because,
everyone's scared
to the science part, and this is the thing that does frustrate me is when people say this is just like the flu. Well, the flu has only killed about 50,000 people a year. This has already killed 600,000 people in 15 months. This time last year, we were at about 10,000 people. This last June, and now we're at like 600,000. So it's
with the numbers too. They did, I'm not, and that's the other thing too is that people will say, "Oh, well, you think that COVID's not real or what?" And totally not. I'm not saying COVID.
No, you're not. But you're questioning. And again, it's you don't accept it on face value. You're questioning the science that went into making the shots. Mm-hmm. And obviously, there's a lot to question with the veracity of the CDC. This entire 15 months, we've not gotten a straight answer that wasn't based on polls and data collection.
Yeah. And the FDA is notoriously corrupt as well. They approve drugs on fraudulent research all the time.
Okay. Let me tell you how old I am. Like this is how old I am. And again, I grew up in a different time. When I was 12, I remember I had this science teacher, this guy named Mr. Kamey, little Japanese guy. And he gave us an assignment. He said, okay, you have to watch the news tonight and get something science-y. I'm like, whatever. Actually, he gave us 5 days. We had to pick one of the days. But by following Monday, you had to have a fucking report, right? And it was like Wednesday or Thursday. I hadn't done it yet. Right? And, whatever. So I go to watch the news. or I'm watching cartoons, actually. I'm lying. I was watching cartoons. And it said, hey, cure for cancer, film at 11 or 5 or whatever. So I missed the 6 o'clock. So I went out and played with my friends. So I thought, okay, I'll have to stay up. So the news went on, sports went on, weather went on. I'm like, when's this cancer thing coming? Finally, the last minute and a half of the broadcast, they're interviewing these scientists who invented a cure for cancer. And they start talking about it because, cured cancer in these rats. This is 1975, right? And they said, well, with all the testing and the FDA approval, it probably will be released around 2001, Bill, but we're really excited. I'm like, wow, that's like forever. From 1975 to 2001 is forever from now. And that's when the FDA used to mean something, when they used to actually, test shit and actually make shit go through you killed 2 people? Oh, you can't put that out. That's too many, right? Now it's like, and they don't care.
Yeah.
They just don't think of the commercial.
Lots of conflicts of interest.
100%.
Involved.
It's a revolving door.
They like the pharmaceutical companies. That's the other thing about science is a lot of people think that we're listening to science when a lot of times we're listening to like paid promotional ads by billion-dollar corporations that are allowed to do their own science.
Back to the privatization of it, though, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Because now the FDA is a revolving door. You could walk out of FDA and get a job at Pfizer for like $500,000 a year.
Right. It's a revolving door. Yeah. That was one of the things that really opened my eyes was with Obama when he said that folks deserve to know what's in their food and that it should be a good idea to label GMOs. And then he turned right around and appointed the Monsanto guy to
Right.
So, and then Biden has done that also with.
Biden's cabinet is listen, they're Republicans. When you sit, when your biggest pitch to me is that Lloyd Austin is a black guy, I'm like, okay, but he was a general in Iraq and he was on the board at Raytheon. Yeah. Wasn't Mark Esper at Raytheon, and wasn't General Mattis before that, whose nickname was Mad Dog because he was a fucking psychotic? Wasn't he a general in Iraq? Oh, but it was bad because it was orange Jesus. Now that it's blue Jesus and the guy's black, it's okay. No, we are so full of shit as a culture. If you belong
with the Me Too movement.
Oh my God.
Joe Biden was all over C-SPAN, being very inappropriate. It's hard to watch those videos. They've scrubbed them from the internet.
You've got 15 credible assault and rape charges. Mm-hmm. You've got 15, and Tara Reid had more on the ball than Christine Blasey Ford, who I believed against Brett Kavanaugh. And he was also such a massive dick who obviously didn't take a psychology class. Thou doth protest too much, motherfucker. He was screaming his ass off. I was working out with Rocky and Bullwinkle. Oh, I was reading the Bible every morning. I wasn't raping anybody. And then she comes on. And obviously she was a 15-year-old girl and she was afraid, but I did not believe her. Tara Reid was a grown woman. She told her neighbors, she told her brother, she told her mom, who called in Larry King that same week. Kind of spooky if you listen to that call. And everyone's telling, now suddenly Me Too doesn't exist anymore. Now, I wasn't a big Me Too guy because my whole thing is, Bill Burr has this great joke. If women ran the world, there'd be no wars. Apparently, there'd be no due process either. Right. Because we threw due process out the window with that Me Too shit. It was like, oh, you thought about it. You're over. I mean, there was the Harvey Weinsteins and the Bill Cosbys, which were god awful, and they went to trial for it. But a lot of the careers that got destroyed were on speculation and just taking her word for it. Right.
But Joe Biden, if you look, he's an obvious predator with his
100%.
He shows all the signs of them. He's pushing himself on those little girls.
He jacked
they were trying to get away.
He jacked Tara Reid against the wall, put his fingers inside of her against her will, and then said, "You're nothing." If that's not cruel and inhumane and showing you what an asshole monster he is, right? His kid, I'm supposed to feel sorry for his kid for the drug problems, but yet he's firing people in his administration who actually admitted to smoking pot. But he doesn't fire Kamala Harris, who was on Breakfast Club last year talking about smoking pot, listening to music that wasn't even released yet, lying about Tupac. She was in college in 1986. Tupac didn't come out till 3 years later. Like, okay, that must be good pot. You're smoking great weed then. I can listen to music in the future? Really? Who's your dealer? I mean, we got a few minutes here before we wrap up, but again, back to the privatization. It doesn't just, it just people just don't understand that when they say that, you want a government handout, I'm like, no, dude, I'm the taxpayer. I want what my taxes should be getting me.
Right.
If you like the airport,
it's not just free. Yeah, it's not free stuff.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean the
but
airport. But
it's funny how they're. One more thing about the shots, right?
Yeah.
The fact that they're giving out free donuts and free ice cream and free beer just to get the shot. That doesn't.
Hey! Free beer. There's cereal. That's a nutrient. That's free beer. That's not like a donut at all. Beer is good.
It doesn't give people like me a lot more confidence in the shot. I was telling the Japanese TV station that I was interviewed on. They wanted my thoughts about the COVID shot, and I said, the thing about the free donuts doesn't give me too much confidence. Just because United States is not really known for being very healthy, and the COVID numbers, they say that obesity and other things contribute. So the free donuts doesn't really help with that. As opposed to Japan, where most people are more healthy. I think that's one of the reasons why we've been affected.
Yeah, but they also got on top of it, and they're also culturally used to wearing masks, and they're also smarter than we are. It's like,
that is true. That
we had people. We had people who should have been dying because they were licking doorknobs in Louisiana, right? Crowing about their rights. Okay, let me bang your sister then without a condom. I want to worry about my rights, right?
And America is also the most corrupt country, and there's a lot of discrimination that goes on in the hospitals.
Oh, sure. Well, and then a third of the people that died of COVID didn't even have insurance, right? So there's that. Right. And then people get pissy when you talk about medical. It's like, oh, you want the government? Yeah, I do. Because I pay goddamn taxes. Right now, you're paying taxes 5 times. You run a business. I run a business. Okay. That's your day job, is running a business. So is mine. You pay taxes 5 times for medical. You pay your taxes. You pay your W-2 or your Medicare contribution through self-employment tax, which I do. Then you pay your premiums. Then you pay your ever expanding copays. They keep going up. And then you pay the 5th one. You pay the denials. I got an acquaintance that got COVID last fall. He works with a buddy of mine. He had Blue Cross. Still walked out of the hospital, healthy as a horse. 50-year-old guy, runs all the time, got COVID. He was in the hospital for a week. $106,000 denials. He owes $106,000 with insurance. So you're cool paying taxes. I would rather pay the taxes one time, right? And have my little Medicare contribution than to pay 5 times and not get shit for my money.
Did you see the one where the parents were posting the screenshot of their medical bill from having a baby, and they were charging the mothers like $40 so they can hold their own baby?
Yeah. And again, how old I am, and we guys are wrapping up here. My mom, there was 4 boys in our family, right? So my mom gave us all our little photo album, our own individual album, whatever. And she has my hospital bill from 1963. You know how much my hospital bill was for 5 days in the hospital with a circumcision?
How much?
And by the way, before anybody gets all pissy, I didn't choose the circumcision, so go fuck yourselves. My dad's Muslim. Piss off. $300.
$300.
Wow. They had no insurance. My dad just went to the bank. He called ahead. Hey, how much is it to get my wife out with the kid? And then he goes to the bank and he makes a withdrawal and he goes and pays the bill. And that was that.
Yeah.
My little brother.
Now like 30,000 is normal.
My little brother was born in 1969. He's an MD now. He's 51 years old. Not 100 years old. He's 51. Going to be 52 in July. You know how much his hospital bill was? $900. So in 6 years, it went up $600. It's insane.
Now it's just astronomical.
And they know they'll get it.
Yeah.
But also too, and it's not even so much that that necessarily the hospitals and doctors are overcharging, but that you got to worry about anything being denied is where the crime comes in, right? Like you said earlier, you said this a second ago, is we're printing the money. Let's just print it for our benefit. Right. And which makes you a unique person, because most people that, I have these discussions with that, we're against the shot are not like you.
Yeah.
Right. They're
I'm not necessarily against shot. And that's the other label.
But your question.
Yeah. That's the other label that people try to put on you is anti-vaccine, anti-this, anti-that. I'm just, like you said, questioning the pharmaceutical companies who are very untrustworthy and unethical.
Well, I'm anti-vax in the regard that, okay, so when I was a kid, again, back in 1912, we only had 5 or 6 shots.
Right. Yeah. Me too. If you were born before 1986, you only had a couple shots. And interestingly, in 1986, there was a law that went on to the books that said that the pharmaceutical companies were exempt from liability when it's regarding vaccines.
Yeah. Thank you, Ronald Reagan. That's another Reagan move. Yeah. 100%. But we used to get the big shots, like, and they would come to our school to give them to us. Right. And there was always a few parents that wouldn't let the kid get a shot because whatever, Christian Science, Jehovah's Witness, whatever. And so, but we had this little gun and we had to line up in the auditorium when we were 5 and when we were 6. We got like mumps, rubella, measles one year, and then polio and whatever. Right. My little brother just had a kid. He's 40. Actually, his wife had a kid. And they got a 2.5-year-old and a newborn 4-month-old. They were attacked with like 70 shots. Mm-hmm. And he's like, no. And he's a dentist. And he's like, no. And he had a schedule. He like scheduled it out. No, when he's 1, we're going to get this shot. And then when he's 3, we're going to get this shot. So they're limiting him to like 10 shots, right? Because I guess now Hep B is a thing. But when they try to like load these shots on your kids, that's all about the dollar.
Yeah, we're one of the only countries in the world that gives shots to a newborn baby on its very first day of life. And Hep B, like you mentioned, is one of those, which Hep B is a sexually transmitted disease. And it's not necessary to give them to the baby right when the baby's first born.
Right.
You haven't gotten a chance to know that baby yet. So how do you know if something is wrong with the baby? If it was, from the shot or if they were born with it. And in my line of work as a teacher, I've had a lot of stories from actual parents who have video evidence of their child being able to walk and talk and look you in the eye and say, I love you. And after like a round of shots, like you said, they do multiple shots on one day. Yeah. I'm being unable to. And these parents have no reason to lie. If anything, it's the opposite, because when you do speak out on this issue, you put yourself out there to be like ostracized, and you could lose family members and friends, and they have no reason to lie. And parents know their kids. So that was kind of another thing that started my questioning the whole thing.
Sure.
But then the other thing is with the COVID passports. When this started about a year ago, people were saying, well, this is where it's headed. And everyone said, oh no, that's misinformation. You're being paranoid. Mm-hmm. That would never in a million years happen. You're being a conspiracy theorist. And now, it's like on the table.
And they're kind of dancing around it. What it is the government is not going to push or prosecute any businesses for discrimination, right? They're not going to fine them if they decide not to let people, if they decide, hey, you got your COVID card with you or whatever, like I'm carrying mine, right? And if they say, you can't come in here, I'm like, oh, well, then fuck off. I'll go drink beer somewhere else, right? I don't need your fucking bar. And on principle alone, I wouldn't go in there because they're run by douchebags. And I don't like to drink beer that's sold by douchebags. So there's always that.
Yeah, that goes along with one of your other podcasts about how, the private companies can do whatever they want thing. Mm-hmm. And how people, like when the whole cake bakery thing was going on, they were upset, which obviously,
sure, it's discrimination. Yeah. It's not right, but this is the same thing. You can't be a dickhead just because it's politically correct in this regard to be a dickhead. It's like, we're out of time. We got to get going, but listen, Brittany, I'd love to have you come back on. This was great. Thank you for doing this.
Oh, well, thank you.
You're getting chased. You're getting chased down right now, like a girl at the prom with a bad reputation. You got Japanese television. Before you know it, you're going to be on Belarusian TV or something.
Well, I've been trying. So I like to write more than I like to talk, but I figure I might as well if.
Well, no, I appreciate you doing this. I mean, and in the interest of transparency, no one knows how we met. We met on Facebook through mutual friends. But you just kept writing all this smarty pants shit. And I was going, hey, I got to see what this chick's about because she's like on the ball and she's writing a bunch of smarty pants stuff. And so I was like, so thank you for coming on. I really appreciate the time.
Oh, good. Well, thank you. I really enjoyed it.
Awesome. Hey, guys, listen, again, guest has been Brittany Richey. And if you were listening to the show, then you know what we've been talking about. Again, thebittertruth.info. You can visit that website. That's kind of a one-stop shop. But if you're on YouTube or Spotify or iTunes or anything else, you can always hear the show for free. Like, comment, hit the subscribe button on whatever you listen to these things to. And again, if this stuff makes you uncomfortable, it's supposed to. Sleep tight.